You need to know these things before you set your lineups this week. And the first one was that Brock Bowers was incredibly impressive last week from an efficiency standpoint, and he still has room to grow. He's looking like one of the league winners in fantasy football this year. And if you have him on your fantasy team with another tight end, there is no reason not to start him ever this whole year. And I'm going to tell you why. Brock Bowers had 9 targets last week on 28 routes, which was 32% of his routes he was targeted. And that's really impressive. And honestly, he's probably going to keep seeing increased work. The Raiders have run a lot less 12 personnel so far, and especially last game, than we thought they would. And because of that, you've actually seen Brock Bowers from a snap standpoint, 63 snaps last week. He's only on the field for 43 of them and ran 28 routes while he was on the field. But again, targeted 9 times. And you saw this a lot at the end of the game, especially when the Raiders were going to win that game. Gardner Minshew and Brock Bowers, they were clicking. And you can see Gardner Minshew starting to favor Brock Bowers as a target. Obviously, he favors Devontae Adams as well, but Brock Bowers in particular at the end of the game was his go-to. It was target after target after target. And this is a big deal because Bowers is the tight end 2 right now overall, and he's not scored a touchdown yet. That is remarkable. That sets Bowers' floor so high that you can't take him out of your lineup. You know he's going to get 7-8 targets minimum a week. And when he has touchdowns, you're talking about 20 to 25 points in a week for Brock Bowers. We talk about punting the tight end position, and this year a lot of people were jumping up and grabbing Laporta and Kelsey and McBride and Andrews early.
Bowers was one of the better picks. You're getting him 8th to 10th rounds.
And Nathan and I admittedly both drafted a lot of Brock Bowers this year for that reason. And I think if you have Brock Bowers, now you're not only encouraged because of what you've seen the first couple games of the season, but he has room to grow. And so I think you're talking about with Brock Bowers, a league winner for fantasy football this year. Really excited about that, and it was definitely interesting to point out.
Yeah, I also want to point out another receiving situation over in LA with the Chargers. Quenton Johnson. Obviously, everyone's all excited because he had 2 touchdowns. Not everyone, but look, this was an unexpected breakout for Quenton Johnson. He got a significant amount of targets and opportunity. He had 6 targets, out-targeted every other receiver in that offense, ran 19 routes, which was more than any other receiver in that offense. He out-snapped and out-routed Lab McConkey, who we expected to have a big week 2 against Carolina, who we expected to be the top option there. And while I still think Lab McConkey has plenty of room to grow, and you know, if I were to predict Lad McConkey or QJ long-term, probably still Lad, but I mean, QJ, it's not like he wasn't getting the targets even in week 1. He was getting the targets in week 1. He just wasn't bringing them in, and he wasn't capitalizing on that opportunity. He finally did in week 2 and was able to get those 2 touchdowns. So look, I think overall it's kind of disgusting in LA. Go figure, because Greg Roman is the OC there, so they're going to be running it significantly. And all the receivers there have cap ceilings by far. But look, when you're looking at the routes run, it's very clearly QJ, Ladd, and Josh Palmer as the top 3 and no one else after that. And you're really only going to have room on a weekly basis for one of those guys to produce. I think at this point, you're seeing that it's probably going to be one of QJ or Lad McConkey every single week. I wouldn't count on QJ being able to replicate this success week in and week out. It's probably going to be a split of Ladd or QJ every single week, and you're going to have to pick which one you think is going to do it. But I mean, from a fantasy perspective, and for Quenton Johnson, for all y'all QJ truthers last year, like, this is finally a little bit of encouragement to see him be able to produce and to be able to capitalize on opportunity, which he's never been able to do before. Let's
talk about Jamison Williams. And this is one where if I end up being dead freaking wrong about JMO, I'm sorry I was wrong about JMO, but I'm happy I was wrong about JMO. Because JMO has always been, he was somebody coming out of college when he got drafted. I thought he was super underrated in dynasty circles because he had really good draft capital and because he was one of the better receivers coming out. Obviously had a rough start to his NFL career, but when you're looking at the percentage of offensive snaps over the last really 10 weeks, 12 weeks for Jamison Williams, he's playing more snaps than he's ever played. The Lions trust him more than they've ever trusted him. And he has done something that we didn't personally think possible this year, and we were incorrect about. He is getting 9 and 11. He is averaging 10 targets a game in the first 2 weeks of the season. Obviously, yes, that could change and he could continue to get less targets, and we know that. But right now, it looks like we were wrong about JMO. And it's freaking awesome because JMO is explosive. He's the wide receiver 7 so far this year. 7. He's only had 5 receptions each of his 2 games where he's got 9-11 targets, and this is something you expect from JMO. And so this is where I want to caution you. 121 yards and 79 yards. So again, 200 yards on 20 targets. That's averaging 10 yards per catch. And I think that with JMO, he didn't have a touchdown last game. He still had 14 points. And he did have a big play, but I mean, again, it's not like it's not sustainable for him to have big plays in one of the most explosive offenses in the league. And so I'm really excited about JMO. And again, the target volume is substantial. This could be him turning a corner in his career, which I'd be really happy about. And his snaps going up demonstrates that the Lions trust him. They're ready to give him a bigger role. And while I do expect Water to find its level, I do expect Sam Laporta to get some more targets. I do expect Amon-Ra to continue to get the targets that he got even last week. But you saw Amon-Ra St. Brown still get 18 targets last week, and JMO still got 11 because they threw the ball 53 times. So with JMO, I'm really encouraged. I hope we are wrong about JMO. It looks like we could be, and JMO honestly could end up, I mean, if he continues to get targets like this, he could end up being a league winner, having gone in the 8th, 9th round.
So I have a question for you, because you already mentioned Sam Laporta and how I think both of us believe that Sam Laporta is going to have to produce at some point, and he probably will. But clearly, and we would both agree on this as well, that Jamison Williams has taken away from Laporta, kind of like Laporta took away from JMO last year.
Yep.
So what is going to have to give? Do you expect JMO's volume to go down, or do you expect Amon-Ra's volume to go down, Gibbs' receiving usage? Heck, even Monty got 4 targets. Like, what do you think is going to have to give for Sam Laporta to be on the up?
I mean, on average, I think you're going to see Amon-Ra get the 6 less targets in this per game, and about 11 or 12 every game. With JMO, I could see it being about 2 less than this at 9 targets a game. With Gibbs, I could see it be about 3 less than this at about 6 per game, maybe 7. And so I just opened up 11 targets there. Like,
with 55 passing attempts in one game.
Right, but that's not all that abnormal with the Jared Goff offense. I mean, they throw the ball a lot. When you're looking at last year and some of the attempts they had last year, 35, 44, 53, 35, 35, 44, 35, 40. So again, yeah, they're not going to throw the ball 55 times. Yeah. But at the same time, so what are you trying to say? You give it later.
No, I legitimately was asking you because I personally think all these guys regress. I don't know what's going to happen.
I think that Amon-Ra can still be productive. I think you're going to see.
I think Laporta's best chance at being productive is going to have to be red zone usage. It's going to have to be red zone opportunity, because that's where his production came from last year. He wasn't like getting an insane number of targets last year. Remember, he had 10 touchdowns,
right,
which was the difference between him and Trey McBride's production. And Trey McBride wasn't even productive until the second half of the season.
Sure.
So that's kind of what I think is going to have to happen. He's going to have to get touchdowns.
I think all of these guys, like you, because you've seen JMO get a ton of targets in the first couple of weeks. Amon-Ra didn't the first week and then did the second week. I think things kind of even out, and I think you see Amon-Ra lead the team in targets, and then Jamison Williams and Sam Laporta kind of come in a close second and both get a fair amount of targets per game. I don't think you see David Montgomery get 4 targets a game either. So I think some of this is just going to kind of even out as the season goes on.
Yeah, I hope so. Not panicking about Laporta yet, but just trying to be realistic with what his outlook could be this year from a production perspective. And I also want to talk about Jerome Ford's usage in Cleveland. Again, this is grosser because it's a gross offense in general, but Jerome Ford was expected to be the top guy there, and you saw pretty much an even split across the board with all of these other backs between Pierre Strong and Deontay Foreman as well. When you're looking at the matchup against Jacksonville in week 2, total plays, Jerome Ford outdid Foreman 32-27, but Pierre Strong also took away 10 of those snaps. And then you've got early down usage being Deontay Foreman getting the upper hand, 21 to Jerome Ford's 20, plus Pierre Strong getting 8. Goal line carries, Deontay Foreman got all the goal line carries. He got all 2 of them. And then short yardage opportunities, Jerome Ford did get 4 to Foreman's 1. Third down opportunities, Jerome Ford got half of them. And then there was a split between like obscure backs, Pierre Strong and Deontay Foreman. I'm worried about those goal line carries, because at this point, you're depending on Jerome Ford just getting a touchdown every single week to pay off, and when you're putting him in the flex, because that's kind of what Jerome Ford is. He's touchdown or bust. He's 8 points or 16 points, depending on if he gets a touchdown or not. And if Deontay Foreman is taking those away, I mean, this isn't something that's fluky, because this is what Deontay Foreman does. He's a journeyman running back that goes into offenses that have injured running backs for a season, and he decides to be productive for a few games of the year. And he's doing this in spite of Jerome Ford being there. So Foreman is a bigger back. I mean, stealing a large amount of that run game from Jerome Ford, I think, cannot be overlooked. And what does it mean at the end of the day? It means that Jerome Ford is less of a comfortable flex option. Doesn't mean that I'm excited about Deontay Foreman. Doesn't mean I'm excited about anything really at all in Cleveland's offense. It just means that Jerome Ford is becoming less and less of an attractive option with Foreman taking away from him.
Let's talk about Christian Kirk now. And this has been a really slow start to the season for Christian Kirk. Honestly, I'm not super encouraged by the usage so far.
No.
Keep in mind, they played the Browns last week. Also, keep in mind, he's been outsnapped by Gabe Davis every single week. It looks like from a target standpoint, Christian Kirk was 5th on his own team in targets last week. It looks like from an opportunity standpoint, from a volume standpoint, from a target standpoint, Christian Kirk's not the wide receiver 1 in Jacksonville anymore, which is crazy. Right now, it actually looks like Gabe Davis from a target standpoint and from a opportunity standpoint.
Brenton Strange, he's the guy.
And Brenton Strange has out-targeted him, right? I mean, you've seen that as well. But, Brian Thomas is going to continue to get more work because he's a rookie, and you're going to see that improve. And so for Christian Kirk to, be running less routes than those guys, to be getting, he got more snaps than Brian Thomas this week, but in week 1, it was the opposite. To be getting less targets than Brian Thomas and Gabe Davis and Brenton Strange and Travis Etienne, I'm a little bit concerned with Christian Kirk now. I think that Christian Kirk was always a guy that was always a little bit underrated, in my opinion. But you do have guys there in Gabe Davis and Brian Thomas Jr. that both can be solid NFL wide receivers. Brian Thomas obviously has a lot of upside as an NFL wide receiver. And so I think now that maybe they have different weapons, Trevor Lawrence may not he may not be favoring Christian Kirk as much from a target standpoint. And that's unfortunate because you were drafting him in the 7th, 8th round of your fantasy football drafts. Obviously, we could see this kind of flipping Christian Kirk kind of get his legs back under him again. Right now, I will say I'm concerned, and it does look like from a volume standpoint, he's not the wide receiver 1 in Jacksonville right now.
Yeah, I think Ty Chandler is worth talking about this week because of his workload in week 2 against San Francisco. You obviously had Aaron Jones, who had a disappointing week. But look, when you read between the lines and you actually watch the game, you're like, okay, Aaron Jones was one goal line fumble away from having, another 16-point week. And Ty Chandler wouldn't have really been a discussion here, but I do want to look at the splits because this is something that I'll probably want to monitor over the next few weeks. Ty Chandler has shown the ability to be productive in the past. Now that he's alongside Aaron Jones in the same offense, he had 10 carries for 82 yards against San Fran. Aaron Jones had 9 carries for 32. I think most defenses know that Aaron Jones is, like, next to JJ, the best weapon in that offense. So there's a lot of focus on Aaron Jones, but when you're looking at the early down work and opportunity, Ty Chandler is going to be the guy that's on the field there. But what I care about most is going to be the red zone opportunity. And when you're looking at what's going on in the red zone, Aaron Jones is still going to be on the field consistently. He's going to line up in the slot. He's going to be a receiving option for Sam Darnold, who, isn't afraid to check down the ball and has his limitations as a quarterback. So I don't want to panic about Aaron Jones. I don't want to say that Ty Chandler, is going to be a viable flex option anytime soon. But for a guy who struggled with a hamstring injury consistently over the last couple of years, Aaron Jones at any time could go down, and Ty Chandler is the next man up. And if he's already getting volume now, he's going to continue to get volume if the situation calls for it. He's going to be the next man up, and you saw him be productive towards the end of last season. So just wanted to touch on Chandler a bit there. He clearly is the other guy that they want to lean on in the backfield in Minnesota.
Let's talk about Brayan Allen. He was a hot topic this last week because he did have 2 touchdowns, 1 rushing, 1 receiving. But when you're looking at the splits and the workload between Brayan Allen and Breece Hall, Brayan Allen's getting some receiving work that honestly I didn't expect. Breece Hall ran 21 routes last week. Brayan Allen actually ran 12 routes. And he got 4 targets. So he's getting about half of the receiving usage that Breece Hall is, but Breece Hall gets a significant amount of receiving usage. So that's nothing to shy away from, I don't think. Breece Hall, go ahead.
This is the second time that we've seen a Wisconsin running back come into the NFL that has major receiving usage questions, and he's starting to prove people wrong.
Yeah.
It's Wisconsin doesn't use a running backs in the passing game.
No, they don't. It's a theme. It's obviously they've gone through multiple coaches now since JT even, but
right.
But it's a trend that you've seen here now multiple times. When you're looking at third downs, Breece Hall is still out-snapping Brayan Allen. They're 6-1. Short yardage, 5-1. Early downs, 26-14, actually. So you see Brayan Allen is cutting in some of the early down work, and that's where Brayan Allen is getting most of his usage. Now, until you see Brayan Allen cutting into, third downs, I'm not sure this is going to be anything to, freak out about from Breece Hall's standpoint, or even put Brayan Allen in our starting lineup on a consistent week-to-week basis. They didn't have any goal line carries in this game. You did have the touchdowns from Brayan Allen, but they were both a little bit longer touchdowns, so they weren't goal line carries technically. So with Hall still dominating third downs, I don't think you're starting him. However, you have seen Like, I mean, we value guys like Tyjae Spears and Chase Brown in fantasy football. Brayan Allen is getting that type of receiving work right now. And so he could end up being really valuable this year. And obviously, if Breece Hall goes down, you're going to be really encouraged that Brayan Allen can step in and get some receiving work and have a pretty high floor as well. He could become fantasy relevant here pretty soon, so it's going to be worth keeping an eye on there.
Everyone's eyes are on the Rams receiving room as well now that Cooper Kupp is going to go on IR with Puka Nacua already on IR. We've already said this in previous videos, but it's Demarcus Robinson, Tyler Johnson, Tutu Atwell, and Jordan Whittington as just the next men up, the next receivers up, and then Colby Parkinson at the tight end position as well. But I think when you're looking at the snaps and the routes run and the targets that these guys were getting once Kupp went down, I think it very clearly is Demarcus Robinson and Tyler Johnson as the primary benefactors of these vacated targets from Cooper Kupp. I mean, you're looking at the snaps for Demarcus Robinson, 48. Tyler Johnson, close behind him at 45. Routes run, 28 for Demarcus Robinson, 25 for Tyler Johnson. 4 targets for Robinson, 3 targets for Tyler Johnson. It's disgusting. It's ugly. Neither of these guys I'm comfortable flexing right now, even with Kupp out of the picture, and even with a full game plan, a full week of game planning for Tyler Johnson and Robinson being the primary benefactors. It's not pretty, but those of you who are wondering who it's going to be, I think both of us would lean Demarcus Robinson because he has pre-established chemistry with Matt Stafford, counter to what we said in week 1, but Tyler Johnson is close behind. I think those guys are both going to be on the field pretty much all the time. Tutu Atwell is going to have the most explosive play ability, so he's going to be very boom bust. We've seen that in previous seasons with Cooper Kupp down. Tutu Atwell has been able to establish himself as that big play threat. But look, regardless of what happens, it's going to be ugly. It's going to be disgusting. Keep an eye on Demarcus Robinson and Tyler Johnson specifically.
Let's talk about the Broncos, and this is a pretty ugly situation across the board. You know, Sean Payton won't let Bo Nix freaking throw the ball down the field. But when you're talking about the wide receiver 2 there, you had Devon Vele come out in week 1 and get 8 targets, and everybody's like, okay, actually, this guy might be the wide receiver 2 there. Yeah. Well, without him there, you had Josh Reynolds really step in and solidify himself as the wide receiver 2. He had 5 targets, 93 yards in week 2. And so him running 29 routes compared to, Lil Jordan Humphrey's 30 and Cortland Sutton's 37.
Lil Jordan.
I think that that's a good name.
Yeah, that's a great name.
I think that you're going to see him be a lot more involved than the rest of the guys there. I think Josh Reynolds is clearly the second best wide receiver in Denver. I think he was not bad last year. We talked about this in the stash video, but I think last year when you're talking about what he did in the lines, he wasn't bad. And again, he had a lot of games in double figures, 12 points, 23 points, 17 points, 10 points, 9 points, 13 points, 9 points. So the dude can produce. The dude is a touchdown threat. And I think when you're looking at the rest of the wide receivers there, I think he's better than Lil Jordan Humphrey. I think he's better than Troy Franklin by a long shot, Marvin Mims by a long shot, Devon Vele by a fair amount, in my opinion. And so I think he's somebody that he's worth keeping an eye on picking up. You saw his usage. You saw his usage come up in week 2, and you saw his production follow. And this isn't all that abnormal with Josh Reynolds. And so I do think that he's somebody that you should keep an eye on, potentially roster in your fantasy leagues.
Carson Steele and Samaje Perine are the top 2 backs that we're looking at in Kansas City's backfield. Obviously, the news about Kareem Hunt visiting Kansas City, it's like his homecoming. I don't see, especially in week 3, realistically, Kareem Hunt really doing much since he's literally coming off the street. He might even be an inactive. He's going to have to pass a lot of tests to even sign with Kansas City. We'll see what happens there. He'll be a guy to monitor, but right now it's Carson Steele and Samaje Perine. I think Samaje Perine, again, I think he's very similar to like a McKinnon type where he, ran 5 routes last game, only had 1 target, but he's going to get a lot more usage now that Pacheco isn't on the field because Pacheco, made a dent in the receiving game as well. He ran 20 routes before he went down and had 5 targets. Now, all of that is probably going to go to Perine. We have no idea what Carson Steele is capable of doing in the receiving game. I don't think you're going to see Andy Reid depend on Steele to do that. He's probably going to be the guy that gets the early down work, is going to be, that vacated volume bell cow type guy, like a Zamir White type of guy who's going to get a lot of those carries. And then Samaje Perine, who knows? Do you think Samaje Perine has more big playability? When you're looking at this running back room, which running back is the guy that you're going to take a shot on?
I think I'd take a shot on both of them. I think Carson still has the rushing touchdown upside, but I think when you're talking about big play and receiving upside, it's obviously going to be Perine. So I think it's going to be a really even balance between the two. I think there's a good chance neither of them end up particularly fantasy productive in a lot of weeks, to be honest with you.
Agreed.
So one thing that we talked about a lot this season and we drafted a lot differently than what ended up happening was Zach Moss versus Chase Brown. Chase Brown was one of the best running backs in the league, according to his offensive line, so everybody freaked out about that. Everybody was drafting Chase Brown, including myself. I was also drafting Zach Moss, though. And when you're looking, I think we have our answer as to who won that battle, and it's Zach Moss. 51 snaps compared to Chase Brown's 13 in the last game, 26 routes run compared to Chase Brown's 5, 1 target to his 0, and then 12 carries to his 4. And so Moss, you still have yet to see produce. However, it was a tough matchup last week against the Kansas City Chiefs, and I do expect him to have a good game this week against the Commanders. The most important thing is from a volume standpoint, not only did Zach Moss win the job, Zach Moss is getting a very large share of that work. Like larger than average across the league when you're talking about most running backs being committees now. And so with Moss, I'm really encouraged by this. He does need to get more targets, I think, but I think production is going to follow for Zach Moss in what is a really good offense, and you're going to have better matchups here soon where he's going to take advantage of that.
Yeah, and DeAndre Swift, I think, is a really interesting conversation here because he was a guy that was going in like 7th, 8th-ish round, depending on what type of fantasy league you're in, and we expected him to be the bell cow, to be the guy that's getting all of the opportunity. And while he still was, he did split goal line carries with Khalil Herbert. I think what happened is, correct me if I'm wrong, they were only on the goal line like once because it was such a rough game for them offensively, Chicago. But
Yep.
I think they gave Swift the ball first, and then they took him off the field and gave it to Herbert, and then Herbert was able to punch it in. So that'll be something that we want to monitor in future weeks is, does Khalil Herbert just take goal line carries? I mean, when you're looking at total plays, it was Swift, and then Travis Homer was the second guy. Khalil Herbert barely got any opportunity at all. It was Travis Homer on third downs. He had 13 plays on the field on third downs, Travis Homer did, compared to DeAndre Swift. They're taking DeAndre Swift off the field on third downs, which is very surprising to me when it's 3rd and 4, 3rd and 5, 6 or 7. Like, you would expect the receiving weapon in DeAndre Swift to be on the field, to be a dump off option for Caleb Williams if he's under pressure, and see if he can get some after the catch opportunity as well to get that first down. And they didn't even have him on the field. That's really surprising to me because if anything, like, I was not a big Khalil Herbert guy. I'm still not a big Khalil Herbert guy. He admittedly, I would have picked him to be the second option if there was to be a second option. It's not even him. It's Travis Homer. Like, what do you make of all this stuff?
My main thing, number one, I think Swift has a bounce back game against the Colts because it's the Colts.
Yeah.
But number two, I am concerned. He's been inefficient. He's getting out snapped on third down like that is considerably concerning for me. And the offense there is just bad.
He controlled the 2-minute drills.
But when you're looking at his targets, he had 5 targets and 14 carries. I'm a little bit, I'm shaky with Swift. I definitely think he's less valuable than what he was drafted.
Shaky with Swift.
So, I think he could have a bounce back game, but it's going to be interesting to monitor, especially like third down.
He has got to get better on the ground, dude.
I mean, it's bad, dude. Well, their offense is bad too, though.
1.3 yards per carry.
They also can't throw the ball. So, like, because Williams has looked that bad. So,
yeah.
There you go. That's all we got for you today. Do us a huge favor. Make sure you drop a like on this video and make sure you're subscribed if you play fantasy football and you enjoy analytical content like this. We're going to try to bring you the highest quality content we possibly can, and you can support us and help us do that by subscribing and liking this video. Appreciate you guys. We'll see you later.